Hello and welcome to Bird Brains, a new YouTube channel devoted to all things avian. I'm Lev Perikian, the author of Why Do Birds Suddenly Disappear and the instigator of the Twitter Birdsong project. And I'm joined by David Darrell Lambert, who is the original bird brain and author of Birdwatching London. Hi David, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Lev?
I'm very well, very much enjoying the warm, sunny spring weather. But waiting for the swifts to arrive and quite disappointed that they haven't got here yet. How about you?
I haven't had any swifts over the garden as yet, but I have seen them locally over a water body. So I know they're knocking around. They just haven't quite percolated down to me, really.
It's quite early for them. It's just, isn't it? They're trickling in this week, aren't they?
Yeah. The next couple of weeks, things should start kicking off really with them. We should get bigger numbers appearing, that sort of thing. But also with this lovely clear weather, they're going to be feeding really high up, so it's not so easy to see them.
Right, yes, so they might be here, but very, very high up.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. So this channel that we've decided to start, I think, is aimed at helping people who might be new to birds and might be just beginning to notice them a bit in lockdown. They're spending more time in their gardens and at home, and they will have heard a lot of birdsong or seen birds around the garden and around the place, and wondering what it's all about and how to get more information. So if you have somebody who's come to you and says, tell me all about the birds, what do I do next? I want to find out about them. What would be your first recommendation to them?
It's such a big thing to say because there's so many options there generally. Yeah. And I normally say to people, just have a look at birds in your garden or go somewhere locally, because there's places like Raynham RSPB where you can actually hire binoculars. So you don't have to invest anything. You can turn up even to somebody that walks, someone shows you around, points at birds, and if it tickles your fancy, it tickles your fancy. You don't have to shell out on anything and just see how it goes, really.
Excellent. So once they've got the bug, and they need to, they're seeing a few birds about the place and having difficulty recognizing them, and they've got a bit of money maybe to spend on things. What would you say they should get first? What would be the first piece of kit or the first guides or whatever?
Well, there's really two main things that they should get first of all. Got to be careful how I signal that, don't I?
Yeah.
First one is a pair of binoculars, and you can spend, you need to spend probably about 100 quid to get something reasonable. And you buy a second hand, which means you're saving a bit of money straight away. Yeah. And obviously you can spend up to a huge amount of money, but you're really looking at buying something that says something like a magnification of 8 or 10, probably 8 to begin with. And that will be on these binoculars. It says here, can you just see? 10 by 42.
Yep.
So the first number is a magnification, and I would recommend 8 because you don't want anything too powerful. Because what happens with bigger magnifications, you lose depth of field, and therefore it's harder to see stuff.
Right.
And then the second number is the width of the objective lens. See the number there?
Yeah, got that.
Yeah, which is these bits here. And you want something like 30 to 40. If you've got 8s, you want at least minimum 30, and if you've got 10s, you want at least 40. And that allows more light in. So you don't want to have it really narrow, so you can't see a big field of view. It's very narrow, and you want to get a lot of light in, so it's easier to use.
Yeah.
So that's what I would suggest.
Yeah,
and
the temptation is sometimes it's to go for the big numbers, isn't it? I think some people think, oh, it's got better it's got a large number of magnification, therefore it must be better. But actually, also it makes them heavier to hold, doesn't it? Sometimes those bigger numbers. So.
And even with a smaller number, you could perhaps buy something that you get a higher quality lens, because the lens is what you pay for. Right. You know, if you buy a box standard glass, there's not a lot of coating on there, so you have issues looking into the sunlight and stuff like that and seeing more detail. So if you buy a lower magnification, you may spend like a similar amount of money as buying a higher one, let's say, and get better quality. It's all about the quality, really, and affordability.
But I suppose for somebody who's just beginning, it's useful to have anything, so that thing that is just a blip at the bottom of the garden or a blip on the other side of the pond or the park, they can actually bring it into focus and begin to identify it. But then, of course, that comes into the area of actually knowing what the hell these birds are in the first place.
Right.
And there's loads of things, and you've got the best one there. You've got the Collins Bird Guide.
Yeah, I mean, the Collins Bird Guide is great. It's fantastic. It covers all of Britain, Europe, and North Africa, parts of North Africa and the Middle East as well. So it's great because the illustrations are just really, really beautiful. And the text is very good as well. The only downside for a beginner is you've got all these European species. So when we look at, say, something like tit species, there's like maybe 15 species of tit or something like that in Britain and Europe. And we only need to focus on probably like five or
six,
three or four to begin with. And that's it.
Yeah. So it's being able to sort out the ones but they have maps, don't they? So you can see, you can look at the Britain map and it goes, okay, that comes to Britain or it doesn't come to Britain.
And that's perfect. You've got a great tit singing in the background.
I have. It's perfect. I know. It's almost if it was on cue. Almost if I'd lined it up and paid it to come and sing. They do sing a lot around here, and we have coal tits as well, and the usuals like any garden. I'm in South London, and we got the usual species that you get. And I think, and I've just, as you know, I've just doing this Twitter Birdsong project, and somebody asked me. I've been doing a tweet a day, basically trying to guide people through the sound, the world of bird noises. And somebody asked me the other day, where do I go from here? I can't scroll through 82 different sounds. And I said, well, you're probably going to be able to narrow it down, because in your garden, even if you've got the biggest garden, you're not going to have more than 15 or 20 species coming. So I suppose it's a question of beginning to familiarize ourselves with the basics, the commonest ones, and then go from there, because it's usually a common bird, isn't it? It's not often a rare bird, is it?
No. I mean, the basic idea is that you start off in your garden, learn everything that's in your garden, then you start branching out, go to your local park, your local wood, maybe to a nature reserve, because there is that temptation to grab a field guide, a pair of binoculars, and head to some mecca place like Minsmere, and there where you may be exposed to like 60 or 70 different species in one day, and you come away not knowing what the hell you've seen, because there's so much out there.
Well, I suppose it's great. That kind of experience is amazing to get the enthusiasm going, because it's a fantastic experience. But as you say, it's very confusing when you first go there. And you go,
But a lot of these places have guides there helping you on guided walks. So you can go around, and people like myself will show you and point out things. And often if you just ask people, they're just very willing to share their information.
They are generally very helpful. I've that's been my experience. I mean, I've not been birding nearly as long as you have, of course. I've come back to it in the last 5 years or so. And I think I was intimidated at first at all these people that I imagined had all that knowledge, and I was scared to ask. But really, people are generally very approachable in the hides, and if they're not, then that's their problem. They can just sit there and grunt and look through their scope.
It's funny because sometimes people with all the gear still have no idea. So I was at Spurn once, sea watching, and there's this guy on the end of the line of us watching, and I said he was like, he had like Swarovski telescopes, Swarovski binoculars, I mean, thousands of pounds. But he just didn't know what he was looking at all, which is fine. It's just you can't assume just because they've got the best gear that they know what they're talking about.
I think that's often true. So we've talked about binoculars and we've talked about field guides. Some people are often asking me about whether there are any apps that can be useful, because there's all sorts of technology nowadays, and especially the commonest one I get is there a Shazam for Birdsong? So I can just hold my phone up and the bird will sing, and they'll be able to say, that's a great tit. And I usually, I'm not against that kind of thing at all, but I'm slightly wary of them. But there are birds, there are things for recognizing birds from photos as well, aren't there?
Yeah, there's an app called Merlin produced by the Cornell University, and that is really good. I mean, I tried to break it, so I tried to take really bad photos, shove it in there and see what happens, but it normally gets them all the time, so it's very, very good. The trouble with bird sound is they're designed around only one bird singing at a time with no other background noise. So what happens is you go out in the garden and you hear a strange bird and you you get the app to listen to the sound,
Yeah.
and unfortunately the app picks up everything in the background. So
Right.
then
Yeah.
you can't narrow it down always.
Like the kids
In
in the
order to,
next garden.
yeah, the people next door, you know, your family at home, everything, TV, music,
Yeah.
and therefore it doesn't always get that accurate feel. Whereas, like what I've noticed with people is when I'm out and people say to me, "What's that sound?" I say, "Well, what sound do you want about?" Because I can hear like 16 different birds all calling at once, making different sounds. You need to kind of point in that general direction. A good thing to do is actually use your mobile phone,
Yep.
and then just do a little video of where the bird's singing, because that gives people an idea of the habitat.
Yeah.
And also you can also say at 4 seconds in, the bird starts singing or making their sound.
Yeah.
And then you can post that on stuff like Twitter and first of all stuff like Facebook. And generally there are people out there on some of the bird ID groups who can actually ID them. Although sometimes you find people wrongly IDing stuff as well, which does happen.
Which is quite fun to see the comments going down. People saying no, definitely not a marsh warbler.
Yeah.
But that's actually interesting because I know that recently a lot of people, of course, have noticed in lockdown. They've noticed all these bird songs, as we mentioned before, and so they've been moved to start learning about it.
Yeah.
This isn't really, in a way, it's not the best time of year to do that, is it? Because there's so much going on.
Yeah, I always recommend people to start like in the winter time, December,
Right.
because you only have like maybe half a dozen or a dozen species singing, and they're not all singing at once. It's just like the old robin sings in the evening and at dusk. Occasionally a blackbird sings, or a great tit will start teetering loud, and then you can break into it nice and gently, you know, and then you build up to the spring, because people come on doing choruses with me and that sort of thing. And I'm
that's where we met, wasn't it? It was a Horniman garden.
Oh, was it? Was it?
On chorus walk, and I was going, "Oh my God, this guy knows his stuff. I need to get to know him."
Knows his apples.
He said,
so yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, I can hear a goldfinch singing. There was a blackbird just making some noises. There was a lesser white-throat, a collared dove just started singing, and it's that kind of big confusion. Because I always recommend people only learn like 1 or 2 bird sounds or calls every time they go out, because it's very hard to keep it in your head.
Try to get their head round, not to overreach. I think certainly it takes a lot of time. I know that in Simon Barnes's book, what's it called, Birdwatching with Your Eyes Closed, which is about learning birdsong, he says you'll spend your first winter learning, and then listening to recordings. The first spring you will not have the faintest idea what's going on, but in the second spring, that's when you'll begin to be able to sort it all out. So I think it's just like any new language, it's a slow process, isn't it? I think, and the apps will help with that. But my view is that you need to use them as a learning resource and help you to learn, rather than giving you the answer on a plate. Because for me, part of the fun is that learning and that feeling of almost triumph.
Definitely.
When you finally recognize that bird song that you've been trying to work out for the last 3 weeks, 3 months, or whatever.
It's always a constant learning curve. So the other day I was out, it was last Sunday, and I had this bird give this really high pitch sound like song, and it was like almost like a real strong rattle. And I was like, what is this? And a wren popped up and done like a song that was almost like a black redstart singing. I've never ever heard of one doing that before.
Yeah.
So, there's always that learning curve of a new song, a slightly different change to the normal calls that for you to experience.
And also the other thing that I've encountered is birds impersonating other birds. I mean, jays are famous for that, aren't they? They'll do impersonations, and black caps we talked about the other day, didn't we? The black cap singing, and it had at least half a dozen other birds that it was impersonating in about 2.5 minutes worth. So, but the hearing the bird song is often the best way of getting into it as well, isn't it? Because you'll hear a bird before you see it more often than not.
Yeah. I mean, probably 90% of my identification is just done by sound, and finding out where birds are, because they make that sound. You pinpoint where it is, and you can zoom in and just see it and enjoy that moment of the bird. But it's all about the sound. The sound is so important. It's lovely to see the bird. Yeah. You've got to realise that sound plays a massive part in it.
And also, I think adding on to that is that people I know who have been learning alongside me and have said that it's often really useful to link the sound with the sight of the bird. So if they see a bird singing in the tree, then that can help it lodge in their head more easily than just the abstract of just a sound. But everybody's brains are different. So that's all really useful stuff. Jumping very quickly sideways to a completely different area that other people do ask me quite often on Twitter and elsewhere is, say you've got a small garden somewhere and you haven't got any birds coming to it. The first instinct is to put up some feeders and put some food out. What's the best thing to do? Do you just chuck any old rubbish out, give them a steak and a chicken and a bit of pudding, or do you get a little bit more selective and think about it a bit harder?
Definitely a little bit more selective. So if we move the camera around, you can see just over here, my feed is set up. Yeah. Oh, look, Snap. Oh, yours is right next to you.
Yeah, I had a robin on it about 10 minutes ago. It just came and sat on that one there.
Oh, really?
Very tiny.
Now, I just had goldfinch and blackbird and collar dove come down. So on my feeders, I've got a mixture of stuff going on, and I've also got a bird bath, which is very important because the birds like to have a good wash.
Yeah, it's a hanging one.
Hanging one with
Very
a hole
good.
in it as well because it's smashed once, so
Right.
I can't fill it all the way up, otherwise it leaks out. But
Fully professional.
Yeah, but on my feeders, I've mixed. So I've got sunflower hearts in, 3 of them, because my sparrows and my goldfinches love them. They go bananas with them. I've got mixed seed as well, which the tit species like as well, and so do the sparrows. Yep. And I've got fat balls up, which the starlings really like as well, and the magpie. And I've got a little tray on top because stuff like wood pigeon, carrion crow, and jackdaw will come down on top of that. Yeah, and then my peanuts, they don't get a lot of mileage. Well, I don't get any woodpeckers.
Oh, really. Right. Oh, so we're headed. I was just going through your list and thinking, oh, yes, woodpecker. We do have a great spotted woodpecker that comes occasionally, and it usually. I get
a flyby, but they never land because I just have a hedgerow. I don't have any tall trees.
Right. Yeah.
Occasionally, I get green woodpecker on the grass, but never on the feeder. Right. That'd be nice.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great?
Also, the tits like the old peanuts as well, so they enjoy that. But the 2 things that I recommend with the feeders is. One is experiment. So everyone's birds in their garden like different sorts of stuff. So it may be that they like more the sunflower hearts. They might prefer the mixed seed. Doesn't really matter. You just need to experiment and play around. And then the other thing you got to do is every 3 to 4 months or so is wash everything, disinfect it all because birds will transport diseases via the feeders. So it's important to change that all up as well.
Right, that's good. And also the other thing I would just going to add to that, because I've seen it in various places, those fat balls in little green plastic nets.
Oh, yeah.
No. Those because birds forget.
And the other thing is people don't always like squirrels coming in. So I've got a squirrel buster, which is very expensive and it's weighted. So the birds perch on it and it doesn't do anything. But if anything big.
Like this.
Yeah.
Great. Of course, we get parakeets on ours as well. I don't know if you have those in your part of the world.
I do, but they just generally fly over. They don't come in my garden.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, every month or so, for a couple of days, we'll get 3 or 4 coming, and they'll swarm all over the feeders. And you see all the little birds looking on from the side, going, "Okay, we've been here for ages," and you just come in and take it all. But also the squirrels as well. We have a baffle, one of those domes that. Trying to stop it from going on top, and it's quite fun watching the squirrels try and work out how to beat the baffle because they're very inventive. But as you say, experiment sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, it definitely is, because I found that even some sorts of foods they prefer, like different brands and so forth. So not always the most expensive brands they may like. Some of the cheaper stuff I found they like one of my bird feeders is it's about £3 out of a supermarket, and I thought I'd just get this. It looked all right. They love it. And yet another one I had that was about tenner or so out of a reserve. They wouldn't go near. They'd feed everything else, and they wouldn't even touch that. It'll be full. Everything is empty, and they wouldn't go near it.
They're going for the cheap stuff.
Yeah, they like it. Well, my ones like it cheap.
So something to learn for all of us, I think. That's brilliant. Thanks so much for your time, David. We've covered quite a lot for people who are just getting into the beginnings of getting interested in birding. In future episodes, we'll be going into more specific, diving into identification and that kind of thing. But for the moment, thanks very much. If you want to find out more, you can put questions into the comments below. Or you can find either of us on Twitter. David is at BirdbrainUK, and I'm at Lev Perikian, and we've got both those tags down there. In there. And if you want to buy us a coffee, you can click on the link, which will probably it's either down there or it's up there or somewhere. You'll find it. Thanks very much indeed for tuning into Bird Brains, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers. Goodbye.